So, Carole Favre.
Well
I'm,
done.
well, I practiced. I'm so happy that we can chat about very exciting things that has been going on in your life. First of all, you are in Bali, and I've learned that you are. There's a reason why I'm mentioning that you are in Bali, because it brought a part of your journey to where what we're talking about today, about healing and about pleasure, focused also on your healing and pleasure healing. And tell us, if you can, a bit about yourself and a bit about the two exciting things that you've shared with me and got me thinking.
So, as you will hear from that sexy and husky accent, I'm French, and I come from a small town in the middle of the countryside in France. Something traumatic happened to me as a child. I was sexually assaulted. Actually, it's something that happened to my brother and I. And that created a lot of issues when it came to feeling confident, to believing in myself. And it was a very interesting journey, because on the one hand, I've always been a little fighter, a dog with a bone. So I've always been very, very spirited and very different from the rest of my family. But on the other hand, I was dealing with this trauma, and it's a trauma that I didn't have the right or the permission to talk about, because my parents asked me to keep it as a secret. And when that happened, as I mentioned, I was with my brother, and I'm older than my brother. And I'm the one who made the decision to listen to the man who assaulted us. So I grew up with major guilt about making that decision. And I was going to say wrecking my life, because that's how it felt, at the time, and wrecking my brothers. I know that Tamar will share with you a talk that I did a few months ago about my journey to healing with this trauma, all the things that I realized. I have no idea how old I was. I've got a complete blank around that. And also what happens when you have trauma as a child is that I have also very few memories from my childhood. So there are a lot of things, a lot of holes that I don't have, which also, I think, affects the way that I live my life, which is trying to create, experiences and memories. And by profession, I'm an experienced architect. So something that's very important for me to help people transform through experiences. And of course I coach as well, so through coaching. But it's been Bali's been very important to me, because it's opened the door to things that are much more spiritual, and it's taken me out of my French box that is a very logical, analytical box, and one that was really riddled with guilt, to a greater appreciation of myself, and to practicing things that I didn't even know existed, which were compassion and gratitude. Actually, these two words were not part of my vocabulary. They are not part of the French vocabulary. We don't do that. Yes. French people are not raised to do that. They are raised to be very, very critical of themselves and of others. So this ability to kind of lean into this, to discover that there were things like gratitude and compassion, And I discovered these two concepts at a time of my life where I was going through a very painful time, because it was the end of a relationship, and it was my third long time relationship, and the last two relationships were terminated because the man cheated on me. And of course, I was in turmoil, because the only thing that I could tell myself at the time was, it's all my fault. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, not necessarily it's all my fault, but what the hell is wrong with me? Why can't anyone love me? Yes. And especially, why is this, why is it that the only person that shows me, because in my relationships I actually chose the man, that I decided to have I decided to be connected with. And why is it that men do not choose me? And why is it that the man who chose me is the man who abused me? So there were a lot of things that were happening about what is it? And then, of course, the bigger thing that comes over is that you go through these things in your early 40s, and that's not as painless as anything that happens to you in your life in your early 20s. When things start happening at a later age, you start being more and more afraid of what is going to happen to you if you're going to end up, on your own. And then the competition as well, it's like there are all these women that are much younger than you, that are better looking than you, and you start, losing confidence as well. So there are a lot of things that are happening as a dynamic around you that make you feel, oh, my God. And I remember that when I first landed on Bali, it took me a long time. I mean, a very long time and I still struggle with that at times, to be surrounded by so many beautiful, younger women. I call them the Bali goddesses, tall, flowing hair, and just kind of like, yoga goddesses. And I'm small, I've got short hair. Like, I don't look, like the women who come to Bali, who are into all the spiritual stuff. And it can be confronting when you look at everything that's around you, and then you age. Now I'm 51, so you have all these things about, my God, the skin is sagging, everything is coming down, and so you've got loads of different things.
Somehow you still went on a wild sex safari. So that's the second talk that you gave. The first one was a very brave talk about your healing journey from the trauma, from the assault that you were going through, and what it means to go. And it's beautiful. I did share it with the ladies from the event, but I'll share it now also in the YouTube of this clip, so everybody can watch it and see how powerful it is. And then in a very short gap of time, you decided to do your first stand-up comedy in front of people in Bali, telling about your wild men safari. So from being uncomfortable, you went far. You went all the way.
Yes. I mean, when you do something that's like, it's like a metronome. Yes. On top of the piano, when you go this far, then you've got to release the tension. And after doing that talk, there was still so much tension in me that I needed to do something that was completely the opposite, and I just needed to release that tension. And I also was feeling the tension physically, and I'm still feeling it. I did that talk in April, and I'm still having excruciating pain in my lower back. The day after I posted the video of my talk, I woke up and suddenly about half of the pain that I had in my back was just lifted. So it's really interesting to notice how your body as well is connected to the things that you are doing. But this thing about, okay, now I've got to release attention. Now I've made people kind of really be arrested and be silent, for 17 minutes, and they were talking to me, and it was very intense. And now I just want to make them laugh, because I needed to know that I was not only about the pain, I was also about the laughter. So I decided to share these things, which, that was a bit uncomfortable, because I speak about things that are very intimate, of things that happened whilst I was, having sexual intercourse with men, things that I realized that I was doing and I shouldn't have done. And I somehow, I thank the universe for the fact that my parents don't speak a word of English, so I can do everything in English, and then I'm saved. I'm gonna, I don't have to deal with that issue. But I think it's very important to dab into all your emotions. I more and more, when I coach, I speak about emotions and authorize myself and the women that I work with to just be emotional, because there is a reason why we have emotions. I mean, we were not gifted emotions to hide them. Nothing that we were gifted is supposed to go unused. Yes. So
Correct.
Nothing that we were gifted in our body is supposed to go unused. Our breast, our yoni, our skin, in the same way as our voice, and being on stage, voicing my truth and my story was very important to me. The power that we have to express ourselves through our words is crucial, because that's a massive part of healing. And emotions are very, very, very important, because if we don't release our emotions, I mean, I know, I can feel it in my body. My body is still tense, full of emotions that are still trapped. And in Bali, I do some work on that. But it's you release the pain, you release the trauma, you release the guilt, you release the embarrassment through working up here, down here, and down here
in their hearts, and
all
all
around your body. One of the most, I know that when we spoke about this, you asked me about the locks and the keys, that opened or closed the doors to pleasure. And I would say that one of the most important healing that I did was what we call a de-armoring of the yoni, and where it's a massage.
So the armoring of yoni is actually the female genital, for the ones that are not familiar with the concept. In Sanskrit, it means the holy place, basically the sacred space. So de-armoring of your genitals, which we have so many
because
blockages.
Exactly. We have a lot of pain. I mean, this is actually, when you were speaking about the doors, so that's the door. That's the door to creation. Yes, because women create through that. We birth through that. If no one comes through it, we don't create what we're supposed to create, life. Yes, I mean, I don't have children, but we can create in very different ways. But that connection is superbly important, because it's part of who we are. Yes, that's what makes us different from men. So let's celebrate it, and let's be kind to it, but also let's know it, and let's free it. And this understanding that we hold a lot of trauma in it is not something that I knew. I didn't realize that this was the case. And then I had this session with a tantra master here, and oh my God, I mean, my
What is
God,
sitting there?
it was incredible, because I both felt.
I just have to add that an experience with a very skillful and masterful practitioner that understands how to de-armor the genitals, because it sounds like a concept out of space for some women. It sounds so violating.
Yes,
and
exactly.
You for sure, I don't think you ever planned that you're going to have a de-armoring of the yoni.
It's not, I mean, I didn't know. Yes. So it's, you know, there are things that come into your life and they just come at the right moment. So it just came at a time where I opened to Bali, you know, because I was at the beginning of, you know, when I came here 5 years ago, I was like, what is this? What are these people? Like, where am I? It's a bunch of aliens, you know, they're completely different. All that spiritual BS, as I used to call it, is not my world. And then you start listening, and Bali's got this effect on you that you can't fight it. Yeah, it comes through you, and then you just have to surrender, and you have to say, okay, God, I'm part of the weirdos now. So let me embrace that. I just was recommended this guy through a woman that I lived with, and I trusted her. So I met him, we talked, and I very well knew, I mean, you know, I'm an adventurer. I'm an explorer. I'm a solo traveler. I've visited over 70 countries in the world. So, I'm very much into pushing my boundaries. And, but that was a kind of trip that I never, you know, I've never participated in, but basically the healer or the man puts his hand or his fingers inside you. And what happens is that your body, the energy that's inside your body guides that hand and guides those fingers to go to the places that it needs to, you know, to release the trauma. And two things happened for me. One thing was that I got connected to the universe, like all these things about, oh, we're part of the universe and blah, blah, blah. I was like, God, just shut up. Yeah. And then suddenly I just felt this immense, I virtually felt that I had the whole galaxy in my heart. It was surreal, the immensity. I also, actually another thing is that I also realized that I had a lot of space, because I'm tiny. So when men penetrate me, I feel it, you know, to my back. Yeah. It's like a sword. So, and then for the first time, I didn't even realize that he has his hand inside of me. There's so much space, you know. I don't know if you watch, if anyone is familiar with Doctor Who, but it was very much like entering the TARDIS, you know, this spaceship which goes from being the size of a phone box to the size of a massive spaceship. And it's just surreal how we can make space as we make for children. And our body is like this, and no one tells us that. No one speaks about the space that we hold inside ourselves. So that was mind blowing. But the third thing was that I also got connected to the coldness of my heart. My body, suddenly his fingers switched into a position, and I felt frozen. And that was connecting with how tough I am with myself, you know, how hard I am with myself, judgmental of myself. And it's okay to do a lot of coaching and to talk about that stuff. It's one thing. When you experience it, you have no choice. It's mind blowing. So you can't ignore it. That's why you need to do that stuff. The coaching is wonderful because it opens you to being able to consider these things and to understand how to do them safely. But you have to experience things in your body. If you don't, it's not going to work because you need to reprogram your brain as much as you need to reprogram your body. And your body is actually, your body is in your brain. So it controls absolutely everything, your ache, your reaction. I often speak about the difference between instinct and intuition, but, it's necessary. And I had another one, another massage, a year ago, with someone else. And again, that was incredible as well. That's something I haven't, talked about, but I intend to talk about, about these things because it was incredible. What was happening, the release, the noises that were coming out of, out of my yoni, and also out of my throat, really, because there is a connection between the throat chakra and speaking your voice and expressing what you want and your yoni and your base chakra. There really is. So all when you ask about pleasure, it's an understanding of your body, and it's still something that's a journey for me because I don't like to self-pleasure. It bores me to death. And I've spent years of not being connected with my body. And now that I'm connected with my body, because I was like, okay, I've run every single day for an hour. I'm just kind of like really driven, ignoring all the pain. And then I did some work here on releasing body trauma. And then it connected me to my pain. And now for the last year, for the last 9 months, I've been in pain. My body's been in pain every single day. And I know I've got to express it. And I had a massage a couple of weeks ago with a kind of healer, reflexologist, shaman, a beautiful Balinese woman who told me, she said, "Oh, you're making progress now because the pains are no longer emotional. They are becoming physical. And what's happened is that your body is shedding all the emotional trauma, but it's now been really tired of doing that. That's why you're feeling very weak." So it's really, it's fascinating. And of course, I'm doing that at a time where I'm hitting the premenopause. So, hey, amen. Let's do everything together, Let's be efficient.
You've said a million things that I want to go into, but I think for now, what the important part for today's conversation is, first of all, that you are the person who presents yourself as the French, the classic French, the logical French, the mathematician, the one that understands that this should happen and that should happen. And you found yourself on an incredible life journey, and people can connect with you on Instagram and on YouTube and on all the channels. We will leave everything in the comments because your journey is priceless. But I think for today, I'm just thinking of the circumstances, the journey that brought you to Bali to start healing, and that healing can't happen only in the mind. It needs to happen in our body, and pleasure is something we experience in our body. And that's one of the most difficult entry points, if we're talking about locks and keys, to understand that we can drop into our body. That's one of the biggest things. As you said, for you, masturbation is boring as fuck. So, it's something.
I'm an energetic person. Okay.
Exactly.
I really I vibrate energy, and there is nothing that I love more than, having a man for dessert. Like, for me, it's we talk about pleasure. Pleasure for me is joy. What brings me joy? Food. Like the going to a beautiful restaurant or cooking food or eating, taking the time to intentionally appreciate, the food that I eat. That's why blessing your food is really important. So the pleasure of that, the pleasure of the texture, I love eating with my fingers, licking my fingers. I think it's a beautiful, it brings me joy. Anything that brings me back to childhood, because mine was broken. So, and as adults, we forget the innocence of our childhood, and our innocence is where we create magic, where we don't stop ourselves from being inquisitive, from being curious, for exploring. Like as kids, we're not afraid of getting hurt, because we get hurt and then, we cry for 5 minutes and then we get off with something else.
Absolutely. And interesting that in space of pleasure, you're really not in your head. It's a place that you can relax. Yes, no, you have a caveat. What's the caveat? Please?
No. I agree with you.
I agree. So that's one of the things, we can't squeeze the topic into, of course, a couple of minutes, but the getting out of your head and feeling and being is something that happens as we are entering that world of pleasure. And it's very important to separate between orgasm, sexuality, which is oriented only to goals, which is really just a reaction of the body. It's a stimulant reaction of the body to being in pleasure, in a safe space, in a place of real opening up and a certain type of process that is happening. So that is something that, when we spoke, I didn't even know about all the treatments and the healing journey you've been going through. And it's blowing my mind.
There is no better place than Bali to do all that stuff, because here it's normal.
Exactly. Yes? And that's important to understand what's normal. So when you're starting to feel that you want more pleasure in your life and you want to open those doors, it's not going to be normal. Don't expect the priest to give you your blessing. Don't expect your parents. Nobody ever taught us. Sadly, many partners we had, most of them, if not all of them, and us ourselves as well, we are not pleasure-oriented. We are not communication and caring-oriented.
And it's not only us, it's also our partners, because we speak as women of pleasure. But my, oh my, did all my partners have serious issues with pleasure. And by the way, I had 3 long-term relationships. And every single one of these relationships was with men who couldn't kiss. Like they couldn't kiss in a way that gave me pleasure, and who refused to kiss me in a way that gave me pleasure. They didn't want to learn how to do it, and who were not very good in bed. So, there were men who didn't appreciate me showing up in sexy lingerie. And for me, it was like, how nuts are you? Like, because culturally, of course, being French, we're big on that seduction stuff and everything. So, and yet I stayed in these relationships because I was so desperate to be loved. I was so deprived of love, so deprived of validation, that I would take anything that was given to me, because it was better to have something than to have nothing. And so many of us do that. And then when you decide to not do that anymore, then the challenges are coming. It's like, oh, okay. But you can connect with pleasure. Now, one of the other things that has nothing to do with sex, per se, or the act of sex, is dancing. I'm a massive dancer. So, I discovered a way of dancing here, which again, when I saw it, I thought, I'm in a nut house. Like these people are crazy. And it's contact dancing or ecstatic dancing. So I was taught how to dance by my dad. Typical thing that you do when you come from the French countryside, you're taught how to become the perfect little wife. So I know ballroom. I can do ballroom. The ballroom is square. Ballroom has rules. Then I ended up, salsa. Salsa is a bit freer, but salsa is still, you've got rules. Yes. Then I learned how to tango. Tango was very interesting because tango is the only dance where you have to surrender your power to the man. You can't do anything. You've got to wait until the man tells you where to go. For any woman who suffers from control issues, it's the best dance you can go into. And then ecstatic dancing. Well, ecstatic dancing basically is like there is no box. You extend your movement. You can even dance on the floor. I mean, it's nuts. But it's so freeing. It's incredible. And the judgment, but I still have issues with feeling judged or feeling like I'm not wearing the right clothes. Like for me, I'm not wearing the right clothes for this. There are clothes for this, clothes for yoga, clothes for this, clothes for that, clothes for that. That's my very French stuff, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh Jesus Christ.
What do you need to wear for ecstatic dancing? It's like, where is my yoga pants and
yoga
kimono?
Pants and I just like, I don't do really yoga.
Well, I'm very pleased to see that Zoom conversations are with silk, beautiful kimono. That's the right outfit. There we go. So, Carole, sorry, I'm delving into your story and I'm forgetting all the rules. So, Carole, when you're talking about all these things, I think there's really a guiding line here, because you're touching on, if you connect to your body, if you get out of your mind, if you learn to let go of the rules and you allow a lack of control, all these things are so important for being let's say, a stronger embodiment, a stronger experience of living. We live frozen. We do what we should do. We do what we need to do. We want to be nice. We want to be in a box. Some cultures, you do it in a different way than others, but we all want to please and be normal. And then comes this need of us as human, as women, to be wild, to be free, to be uncontained, to be connected to this body that has, as you said before, a whole range of experiences, emotions, so many sensations. As you said, the opening for pleasure brings a lot of pain as well, because you realize, if I have one thing to share, that when I had my first yoni experience, yoni massage, I thought, if that's how it feels, what was I feeling now since the first time I was touched by myself or by a partner? That was not that. That's the hardest feeling. And a lot of times, I know for many different tantric and conscious sexuality, and even psychologists that share with me, a lot of anger comes up for women or for humans that are going through a releasing process of, where was I to give myself more keys, more tools for more joy in my body? And sometimes it even means to cry with no boundaries, and no, people won't think whatever they think, but it's not important, because I'm in my body, I'm in my experience. I can go to that side, as you said, the metronome. I can have extreme ecstatic pleasure, but I can also have deep sorrow and let go of it and feel my full expression of my body and my emotion. So you've touched on things that I could not even imagine today, and I think we can just talk another 3 hours, which I hope we will. But for now, I want to say thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
I am truly, honestly, one of your biggest fans.
Thank you. It was worth waking up at 1 a.m.
Absolutely, and I'm so appreciative, and I know all our listeners and ladies who's watching are really, really grateful. They're going like this. So I'm saying deepest gratitude, and continue your journey, and we'll keep on following you in all the channels we advertised. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamar.